Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. Today, we're starting with Aristophanes' Lysistrata, translated by Stephen Halliwell. Before we start, I think a little introduction is in order for this puppy. That's because this was written over 2,400 years ago. This was written in 411 BC, and a lot has changed since then. So I wanted to give you a little background in order to get a little appreciation. And I know I always say, let's stay within the story. We don't want to judge anything except what's in the story. And that rule still holds true. It will hold true for every classic that you and I read together. However, when you're reading a piece 2,400 years ago, when you're reading a piece that's been translated by many, many different translators, what you have to really do is just get a sense of what the surroundings of what was happening during this writing, because this was actually a play, a drama written by Aristophanes. And this was it was set in Greece during the Peloponnesian War. So you have to really understand a little bit about what was going on. Just like with any classical piece of literature, you want to understand a little bit of what is going on, but not necessarily use what's going on or your own values to judge what you read in the piece. So to gain that appreciation, what I wanted to do is just introduce a little bit about what was going on. So Greece was fighting Sparta. Athens and Sparta were two of the powerful city-states. There were a lot of city-states in Greece. They fought each other in tribal warfare, more or less. But Athens and Sparta were the big ones. And the Peloponnesian War was fought between Athens and Sparta and their allies, and it lasted from 431 to 405. See that? So since this was written in 411, they've been fighting for a long time, 20 plus years, right? So it was fought over who's the leader of Greece. I don't want to go into too much detail. But they were fighting all the time. And so they were, marching, coming back, not coming back because they died. And this was all hand-to-hand combat. This was not bombs and modern warfare. Remember, 4,000 years ago, there's no such thing as a radio. There's no such thing as a telephone. So if you lived there, you were try to conduct your life while all this fighting is going on around you. And when you read the play, it's important to understand the society. Men held the political power. Women were relegated to domestic things. Well, Jimmy, that's not the way it is now. Well, depends. Some places, there are still places like that. We're not going to get into what is there now. I'm telling you what was going on then. And Lysistrata is the heroine. She's the hero. And she's frustrated because the war, it's really going on all the time. And so she hatches a plan to end this conflict once and for all. She decides she's sick of it. And so she creates this plan, and she's going to convince the other women of Athens and Sparta to withhold sexual privileges from their husbands. Now, isn't that an interesting concept? So she's going to do that with all the other women. First, she's got to convince the women, and then she's got to hold them to their task to withhold their sexual privileges, whatever. So this is a comedy. It's not a tragedy. It's a comedy. And we're going to discuss in our final analysis what that means, according to what Aristotle tells us. We'll talk about that later. But it's really a battle of the sexes that happened 4,000, whether it happened or not. But it was interesting because Aristophanes, who put this down as a play, and he's really, you'll see comedy is a lot of exaggeration. The women are going to barricade themselves in the Acropolis, and they're not going to do anything until their demands are met. So Aristophanes, through the third-person narrator, he blends humor, satire, social commentary, bawdy jokes, innuendos. It's really a funny play. It's a comedy, right? He exaggerates a lot, and he pokes fun at the people. And we're going to talk about that in the final analysis as well. What is humor? Some people will read this or with Jimmy, and they may even stop because they don't find it funny, or they may say, well, this is not my style of comedy. Whatever you think, I'm not going to force feed this to you. I will tell you this. This is a classic piece of literature. The reason it's a classic is, first of all, it lasted over 4,000 years, and it keeps getting translated. We're not going to see the play. We're going to have to use our imaginations when we read it. However, there's enough commentary that Aristophanes gives on what these actors are doing to each other in order for you to visualize. So Aristotle says comedy depicts laughable errors such as embarrassment or delight. It represents humans worse than they are. Comic characters are not necessarily evil, but they're ridiculous and laughable, as you'll find out. So Lysistrata does this. She, lots of things going on. There's some serious moments. Sit back, relax, and be prepared to be transported to ancient Greece. Stay in the story. Stay in the story. Stay in the story, right? Stay in the story. Don't try to bend it to you. Bend to the story. Well, Jimmy, do people really act like this? Well, you're going to tell me after we read it, right? One more thing. Athens was in many ways a different experience than attending a play today. When they went to plays in ancient Greece, it was very different. And I'm going to talk about that just briefly, that I want you to be visualizing this and pretend you're on a mountainside, because the Greeks were performed in an outdoor theater. They didn't have indoor theaters. Remember, this is 4,000 years ago. I don't even think they had toilets, believe it or not. They used something else, as you'll find out. No. So they used masks, and they were performed by a chorus. That's a group of people and 3 actors, usually. No matter how many characters speak, sometimes there's 3 actors. That's really not important to know in this because there's multiple actors, but it's nice to know that that's what they did. They wore masks. They held up masks. They didn't necessarily wear them like we think of masks since COVID, but they put masks in front of them when they talk so that people can relate to who was talking. 3 actors, they seem to be, doing all the parts. The actors would go backstage after they played one character, switch masks, costumes perhaps, and then reappear. A lot of action in here while this was going on. The Greek plays were performed as part of religious festivals, honoring Dionysus, the god of wine. You're going to see a lot of references to gods and heroes, and I'm going to put a lot of footnotes in here so that you get a sense of what they're talking about. Because I want you to remember this. When these Greeks watched this play, they knew when Aristophanes referred to Artemis or some other god or hero, Hercules, most of these people, in fact, all of these people knew what the heck he was talking about. Why? Because that was the oral tradition. They heard these stories over and over and over again, not necessarily Lysistrata, but the Greek mythology. The Greeks believed in many gods, not one god. So they had stories of gods. And that's a whole other, thing that we can discuss, but we don't have to worry about that now. What you want to worry about is that when they mentioned these names, the audience knew exactly what the hell they were talking about, and it enriched the experience. If I say to you, when you'll see some of what they say, well, by the twins, when they swear like that in the play, by the twins, when they take an oath like that in the play, if you don't know who the twins are, you miss the point completely. So this is going to be a heavily footnoted play. However, it's not going to interfere with the reading because we're going to read and analyze it at the same time. The reason I'm going to give you what those things mean is to enrich your own experience, because we don't want the ancient Greeks to have an advantage over us. We want to be understanding what they're talking about. So tragedies dealt with stories from the mystic past, blah, blah, blah. And this is really a comedy. And this is the case of Lysistrata. It's not a tragedy, it's a comedy. Okay? This is what the theater looked like. It's pretty familiar if you've gone to a play or an opera house. This was on the hillside. So the theater was here, right? The people sat on the hillside here. I give you some of the theatron, which might be cushions or boards on a hill. This was all open, all open. So for, if it rains, bad luck, right? So they sat on boards on the hillside, and the orchestra is where they work. The orchestra, unlike we think of where the band plays, this is where the actors acted. And then they had this thing called the skene, which was a building behind the stage and was decorated like a temple or palace. And in the play, this is probably where the Acropolis version of the Acropolis is, where you'll see there's a door leading there. And then the players come out here and they go through these corridors called the parados. They exit and enter through these corridors, and then they act in front of here. So it's a very closed quarters kind of acting going on. So no matter where you're sitting on your hillside, you can see who these people are, and they will interact with you. They can throw stuff at you. I'm just kidding. Anyway, if you have questions, email me, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Let's begin. Ooh, what a long introduction, but worth it, I think. So, Aristophanes, the greatest comic dramatist in Athens, wrote Lysistrata in 411. And then here's a little background on him. They call it old comedy. We're going to hear about that again in the final analysis. Okay. We have Lysistrata. Okay. She's the leader of the Athenian wives. Athenian wife, Marine, she's an Athenian wife. Lempito, a Spartan wife. So you have Athenians and Spartans. And that's why it's important to know the background, because they are fighting each other, but here are the wives together. You got a commissioner that shows up, Canisius, he's the Athenian husband of Marine, so that's her husband. Herald, it's a Spartan messenger. It's the herald, Spartan, spokesman for Spartan envoys. Let's see here. 1 second. Let me pause this a second. Sorry about that. So you have some Spartans, some Athenians. Then you have a chorus of 12 and a chorus of 12. Chorus, I want you to think of it as a character, but there's 12 people. There's 12 men, 12 women. Then there's a separate chorus incorporating the two half choruses. So they take half of these choruses, and so it's a crowded stage, right? Remember that. Keep that in mind when you're using your imagination. Then there's the leader with a little M, a leader with a little W, and I think you can figure out who those people are. And then the leader of the combined chorus, okay, of the combined chorus. And there are also several small parts for individual unnamed women. So you're going to see these are speaking characters and these are silent characters. So there's a lot of activity on this stage, and it's kind of like watching a movie in real time. So you've got Boeotian, right, Boeotine. These are different areas of Greece. Slave girl. And, well, Jimmy, slaves, really? Are we talking about slavery? Yes, we are. Put that out of your mind for a moment. Slavery's been around. It's still around. All you got to do is look at certain countries, and you're going to see it's still prevalent. So slavery is an issue. And then you got a slave girl. You got some archers, slaves attending the commissioner. So these are still slaves, but they're archers. They got bows and arrows, right? There's a baby that shows up, and there's someone called Reconciliation, who is a naked female personification of peace. Jimmy, are you saying that these actors were nude? I'm saying that the actors wore togas. They sometimes had props on them, as you'll see. They were propped, and sometimes, yes, they actually appeared naked. Well, isn't that pornography? No, not necessarily. Greeks admired the human body. Don't forget, they started the Olympics. We're going to talk about some of the wars they did. They were fans of the human body. They admired, when they created their gods, they fashioned their gods with the bodies of human beings. Not like the not like the Egyptians did with birds, half men. Although the Greeks had half beasts, sometimes the Minotaur was a creature like a bull, and you had I forgot the name of the one that was a half guy, half horse. In any case, he was on some television commercials. Don't be offended. And if you're offended, then just don't read the play. But I think you'll enjoy it if you do. And then you have various slaves. Okay. So put yourself into ancient Greece. No phones, no TV. There's nothing to do except watch plays, right? You can watch a guy who wrote a play, who demonstrated this play. They probably made the play once. It's not like you're on Broadway for months. You did the play once, maybe twice, but you did it once. So you filled your hillside with people. They watched it, they laughed, and they went away. Or they cried, because there are some great Greek tragedies, which we will read. All right, let's go. Early morning. The scene is Athenian street in the vicinity of the Acropolis. There is at least one door in the background, right? And Lysistrata, accompanied by a slave girl, enters and paces up and down with growing impatience. These are the directions that Aristophanes, the third person narrator, this is the third person narrator that gives us these background, right? This background. So the Acropolis is a settlement in the upper part of the Greek city. There was a real Acropolis. And you can look it up at your convenience, just Google it. But the theater that I showed you, it probably has a backdrop shaped or carved out like the Acropolis with at least one door. You'll find out that they'll need that door as the play proceeds. Now, Lysistrata comes out exasperated. She's exasperated. Oh. Now, if they'd have been invited, remember pronouns? Every time you read with Jimmy, he talks about parts of speech and how important they are, especially the first part, the first page. Now, if they would have been invited to a Bacchic rite or a grotto of Pan's or Aphrodite's shrine, you wouldn't be able to move for their tambourines. As it is, there's not a single woman has shown up yet. Then the door opens. Oh, it's my neighbor, Kalonike, coming out. Kalonike, greetings, says Lysistrata. So Lysistrata says if they would, she invited these people, but there's no one there yet. And if she would have invited them to a Pan grotto or Aphrodite shrine, she's the goddess of love, and Pan is whatever, you could look up Pan. You wouldn't be able to move for their tambourines. When you see these asterisks, those asterisks are the translator notes trying to tell you what a tambourine is or isn't. I don't really call your attention to those asterisks unless I really think it adds to your understanding. But tambourines, meaning they're musical instruments or whatever, but all we want to know is that there's no one here, and if she would have invited them to someplace else, it would have been very crowded. So they're in front of the Acropolis, which is a building. It's not like a shrine or a grotto. So she greets her neighbor, Kalonike. Kalonike says, "You too, Lysistrata. What's agitating you? Don't frown, my dear. Those arching eyebrows just don't suit your face." So she's making whatever. And Lysistrata, Kalonike, I feel a burning pain in my heart, a sense of bitter grievance for us women. Among the men, we've gained a reputation for being fond of schemes. Kalonike, and so we are. And yet when they're told to gather for this meeting, when the women are told to gather for this meeting, they're to come and discuss a matter of such importance, they stay in bed. There's no sign of them. Look, darling, says Kalonike, they'll come. Now you're going to say darling sounds like an interesting word nowadays. Don't think about nowadays. Put yourself into the play. Look, darling, they'll come. It's hard for women to leave the house. I dare say some are getting their husbands up. See that little dash there? Husbands up. Or waking the slave. See, this is body language, ladies and gentlemen. Some are getting their husbands up. Yep. Or waking the slaves, or putting a baby to sleep, or maybe washing and feeding their little ones. Lysistrata. There are other things that ought to matter for more. Kellyanite. But what's the reason, dear Lysistrata, which makes you ask us women to meet together? What kind of thing? What scale? So they don't even know why they've been invited for this meeting. And Lysistrata says, it's big. Kellyanite, suggestively and beefy. You see, from the beginning, what we're hearing, what the audience is hearing, is body language. This is bawdy, B-A-W-D-Y language. It's suggestive language, right? I'm not going to tell you, use your imagination what they're talking about. Getting their husbands up, big and beefy. Lysistrata says, it's beefy, all right. But Lysistrata is not talking about what Kellyanite is talking about. Kellyanite says, it sounds worth coming for. It's not like that, Lysistrata says, or else they'd all be here. You see what I'm saying? It's not like that. I'm not talking about sex, or else they'd all be here. It's something I myself have pondered hard and tossed around through many sleepless nights, Kellyanite. And this thing you've tossed, well, delicate? So delicate that Greece's whole salvation depends entirely on the female sex. I drew a little line here, and I want you to remember the word body. You're dealing with sexual manners in a comical way, humorously indecent. Well, Jimmy, I don't find this funny, talking about big, beefy, whatever. Well, that's okay. You don't have to. I'm not saying you have to. What I am saying is if you're going to understand this play, you got to get into the play and understand that these characters do. The audience around looking at this play and listening to this play do. They're enjoying it. Because remember, there's no television, there's no phones, there's no internet, there's no nothing. It's just people living together, right? But Lysistrata is saying it has nothing to do with sex. This thing is so important. It has nothing to do with sex, but it depends on the female sex. Kellyanite, the female sex? What a slender hope. So she doesn't have much confidence in being a woman. Lysistrata, it's up to us to run the city's affairs. And if we don't, there won't be any Spartans left. And Kellyanite, no Spartans left? How simply wonderful. Lysistrata, and every single Boeotian will be wiped out. Biotin. No, please, just spare a few of their eels, that is. You see the word eels? Okay. There's a little Boeotia is sometimes Latinized for Boeotia, is one of the regions in Greece. It's part of the region in central Greece. Remember, I told you when they refer to these things, it's really pieces of Greece, right? Different city-states of Greece. The difference between Athens and Sparta eventually led to the war. It's the Peloponnesian War. That's what they're talking about. So when she says, there won't be any Spartans left, remember, where is this play taking place? In Athens, at the Acropolis. It's written by an Athenian, Aristophanes. So if there won't be any Spartans left. And she says, there's no Spartans left. How wonderful. That would be great. The war will be over, right? And she says, no, please leave for their eels, at least of their eels, that is. Well, you don't have to read that footnote, and I don't know if I captured the footnote, but it doesn't matter. Maybe they're famous for eating their eels. Lysistrata says, and as for Athens, my tongue can't bring itself to say the worst. You grasp my implication? But if the women attend the meeting here, Boeotian, Spartan women, as well as ours, we will launch a common effort to rescue Greece. Okay, and she says sensuously to expound moralizing. What clever illustrations deed could women achieve? So she quotes somebody illustratively. What clever illustrative deed could women achieve? Normal voice. We spend our idle lives living at home, all dolled up and draped in chiffon dresses and prettified and slinky gowns and ritzy evening shoes. Lysistrata says it's just these things that could save the situation. Little chiffon numbers, perfumes, ritzy shoes, and all of that rouge and see-through lingerie. Huh, what's she talking about? But what could they do? Says Kalanick. They might prevent the men from threatening one another with their spears. They, who's they? All these little things that women do when they're at home. Kalanick, for that, I'll have my chiffon dress redyed. Or waving shields, she continues. They might prevent the men from threatening with their spears or waving shields. That's what they fought with, spears, shields, swords. Straight on with that slinky gown, Kalanick says, or swords. So she's just building on what she's saying. She's tired of these men fighting, right? Kalanick, I'll fetch some ritzy evening shoes. She's thinking about what she's going to dress up as. Well, shouldn't the rest of the women be here by now? Says Lysistrata. They should have simply flocked here long ago, Kalanick said. But dear, you'll see the women from Attica do everything too late. It's always the same with them. Not a single woman has come from the coastal regions yet, and no one's here from Salamis yet. Kalanick, I bet that they were up at dawn for an early ride. The people from Salamis, for an early ride. There's a little footnote there. Greek term for sailing, riding are often used for sexual innuendo. So Kalanick, who seems to be, obsessed with sex, says the people from Salamis might have been up for an early ride. And the footnote says Greek term for sailing and riding. Maybe they were up to ride their boats, but they're using it in a sexual innuendo. Lysistrata. And as for those that I felt quite confident would be here first, the women of Arcanani, they haven't come. I know Thespian's wife was bracing herself with a drink before she left. Oh, look, here are some women approaching now. So women start to appear from both side entrances, and among them, Murine, Lysistrata. And here's another group over here. Kalanick, good heavens, what deme are they from? Anagras, sniffing. Yes, I see. No wonder that they're raising such a stink. People in different parts of the country, like if you don't wash, you know what happens when you don't wash, right? Murine, I hope we're not too late, Lysistrata. Well, what? No answer? Lysistrata, you've let me down, Murine, turning up so late for such important business. Murine, I'm sorry. I had to find my bra in the dark. But now that we're here, explain if it's really urgent. Lysistrata, not yet. We're going to wait a little longer until the Boeotian and Spartan wives have time to get here too. Murine, quite right. I'm sure we should. But here, in fact, Lampito, right now comes Lampito. And that's the Spartan. Enter from a side entrance. Lampito, a muscular beauty, with two other young wives, all wearing short, revealing dresses. The new arrivals immediately become the object of close physical attention. Sparta was a militaristic state. Women and men, all they did is train to fight. We can talk about that more as we go, but you have to understand that these people were extraordinary specimens of human beings, both the men and the women, because that's all they did. And no TV, right? No internet. They exercised. They, especially the Spartans, they constantly trained for warfare. Lysistrata. Warm greetings, Lampito. Dear Spartan friend, sweetheart, you're looking simply ravishing. What gorgeous skin and all those muscles of yours. You could throttle a bull. Lampito says, by the twins, I swear I could. Now, remember I told you in the introduction, these are little oaths. By the gods. And this Lampito says, by the twins, I swear I could. My exercise includes rump stretching kicks. You know what those are? Try squatting and kicking a lot. The twins are Castor and Pollux. They were the twin gods, and they're described as fine horsemen and fighters. So Lampito, being a Spartan, swears by the twins. They're fine horsemen and fighters. Helenite, I've never seen a finer pair of breasts. Remember, Helenite, since the beginning, has been thinking sex, right? Lampito, stop feeling my flesh. I'm not for sacrifice. So when you hear a character say, stop feeling my flesh, you can imagine what Helenite was doing, right? Can you imagine that? And she says, I'm not for sacrifice. So they used to sacrifice animals, not human beings. These are not, they did not sacrifice human beings. But she's joking. Don't stop feeling me. I'm not for sacrifice, Lysistrata. And what about this other girl? Who is she? A Boeotian, a fine one by the twins, said Lampito. She comes for the meeting too. Marine, examining her. Oh, a true Boeotian. Her belly's as flat as any Boeotian plain. Helenite, peering. And look at her little bush, how cutely trim. So they're examining each other physically, right? They're having a little fun, right? Well, Jimmy, I'm going to stop reading with you. This is just too much for me. See you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile. This other girl? A choice piece by the twins, Lampito says. Croatian, right? Cornithian. Forgive my pronunciations. What's more, a real choice piece, Helenite says. That's all too clear from the front as well as the behind. Remember, the audience is watching all this take place. Lampito. Now, who's the one who summoned this gathering for all of us women? Who? Lysistrata. It's me. Lampito. I'd like to hear what it is you want. Tell us now, dear friend, Helenite says. Explain this grand idea that's on your mind. Lysistrata. I'll tell you, but first, I'm going to ask you a question. It's something small that I need to know. Helenite. Well, feel free. Lysistrata. Do you ever miss the fathers of your children when they're off on active service? I certainly know that you've all got husbands away from home like this. Helenite. You're right, my dear. My husband's been in Thrace for the last 5 months. He's guarding Eucrates. And editor notes that this is a joke by the author, which may or may not be true. I don't know what the joke is. Neither did the translator. So, and mine's been, Marine says, mine's been gone for 7 whole months at Pylos. Remember, the Peloponnesian War is going on. Their husbands aren't there. Lampito. Well, mine, even when he comes home, he's got hardly any time to hang up his shield before he flies off again. So remember, the Spartans fight a lot. Lysistrata, not a glimmer of males, not a single adulterer left. So there's nobody left. There's no men left. And since Miletos ditched our old alliance, I haven't set eyes on a single 5-inch dildo. You know what that is, right? Which dildo is like a fake penis, which might at least have given synthetic relief. See, we immediately go into a very bawdy discussion of sexual things, right? So Lysistrata is saying, I can't even set eyes on a dildo. So are you ready? If I devise a scheme to help me end this war, are you ready? Kellenite, by the two goddesses. The two goddesses, Lampedo swears by the twins. She swears by the goddesses. One is Dempter, the goddess of the harvest. Dempter is also known as the fertility god. And Perspone is also known as the goddess of the spring and resurrection. Dempter, Perspone, Persephone, however you want to pronounce it. By the two goddesses, I'm even prepared to pawn this dress to raise the funds to celebrate drinks, celebratory drinks. Murine frivolously, and I'd be willing to cut myself in half and serve myself as a sacrificial flatfish. Frivolously means she's just joking around. Lampedo, and I would climb up Mount Tagetos and gaze upon the land of peace below. So the Spartan wife, Lampedo says, I'll climb the mountain and I'll look at the peaceful land. See how they tie in exercise and exaggeration? And don't forget who's watching the play, Athenians, right? I'll tell you then, there's no need for secrecy anymore. I assure you, the assembled women, to have a chance of ever compelling our husbands to live in peace, we really must, Kellenite, do what? Lysistrata, well, will you do it? Kellenite, we promise we will, if death itself is the price. Lysistrata says, we must give up the pleasure of the prick. Women shudder and start to leave. Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it. What makes you turn away? Says Lysistrata. Don't try to leave. And you there, why are you grimacing? Why are you making a face and shaking your heads like that? Melodramatically. Oh, what means this pale complexion, these tears that flow? Well, will you or won't you? Tell me. Kellenite, I couldn't. The war must take its course. Murine, I feel the same way. The war must take its course. Lysistrata, so that's your view, you flatfish. Just before you said you'd even cut yourself in half. Kellenite, ask anything else. I'd be prepared to walk through fire, but not give up the prick. There's nothing like it, dear Lysistrata. Lysistrata, well, what about you? Murine, I too would walk through fire. Lysistrata, the female sex, sheer lustfulness, that's us. No wonder they write such tragedies about us. Our lives are simply full of sex and intrigue, pleadingly. But you, dear Spartan friend, if only you would stick with me, we would save the situation. Please lend support. Why only Spartan? Why Lampeto? Why? Because Athenians are fighting Spartans. And apparently the Athenian women don't want to give up sex, right? Lampeto. Well, it's difficult by the twins for wives to sleep alone without a dick. And yet, we must. We need peace back so badly. Lysistrata, dearest friend, you're the only genuine woman. Kellenite, well, suppose we really did abstain from it. See the pronoun? You know what it means now, right? Though God forbid, what difference would it make? What difference would it make to getting peace? Well, so what if we did it? Lysistrata, a difference like no other. If we were to sit at home with our faces powdered and wore short silken shifts to give a glimpse of nicely trimmed small triangles of hair, so our husbands would start to swell and wanted to shag. But we held back and refused to let them do it. I tell you now, they would make peace in a flash. Lampedo, the Spartan, it's true. When Melanos caught a glimpse of Helen's breast, it made him drop his sword. He couldn't kill Helen, his wife, after taking Troy. Now, Linnaeus, if you know the story of Troy, they kidnapped Helen, and yet he couldn't kill her, when they kidnapped her. It's a long story. Kellenite. But what if our men reject us then? What if they reject us? Lysistrata, to borrow Peritacus' phrase, try self-abuse. Kellenite. A useless substitute because it's not real. And what if they turn quite rough and they drag us upstairs? Kellenite says. In other words, I don't want any substitutions for the real thing. What if they just get really angry and rough and start dragging us? Lysistrata, grab the bedroom door and cling for your life. But what if they beat us up? Kellenite, remember, she's the one who, since the beginning. Lysistrata says, keep on resisting. They cannot derive pleasure from forcing us. We've got to make them suffer in every way. They'll soon give in. No husband can enjoy a life of constant friction with his wife. Isn't that the truth, ladies and gentlemen? Kellenite, well, if you two agree, we'll go along. Lampito, but how are we going to persuade our Spartan husbands to keep the peace without duplicitous guile? In other words, how are we going to do this without really being duplicitous, conniving? And who can hope to persuade the Athenian rabble to keep a mind fixed on negotiations? Boom. See? They don't like each other still. The Athenian rabble. Lysistrata, don't worry. We'll soon convince our people. We'll convince our people here. Lampito, not while their tremes are having rigging intact and your goddess's vault contains such limitless funds. In other words, you've got a lot of money. This Tyre was an ancient vessel and a type of galley. The Athenians were known for their ships. So Lampito's saying, not while you got a lot of money and a lot of ships, you're not going to be able to do it. And Lysistrata says, I've made provisions to cover this very point. We're going to seize the Acropolis today. This task has been assigned to older women. And while we talk here, they're going to go and use the pretext of sacrificing to occupy the hill. So Lysistrata's plan includes sending the older women to take over the Acropolis, where they'll all eventually go. Lampito says, well, that's a perfect ploy. You've thought of everything. Lysistrata, in that case, Lampito, let's swear an oath at once to make our pact unbreakable. Lampito, reveal the oath. You want us all to swear. Right. Here's my Scythian slave. The slave girl carrying a shield steps forward. Hey, look, you sharp, says Lysistrata. Come here. Place the shield there, facing down. Come, someone pass the meat. Kellenite interrupting. Lysistrata, what oath is this that you're going to make us swear? The sort that I've heard, such that occurs in Aristoteles, a blood oath over a shield. A blood oath over a shield. Kellenite. Don't use a shield to swear on an oath for peace, Lysistrata. Lysistrata. Well, then let's swear an oath then. What would you like? Kellenite. Well, maybe we ought to find a pure white horse for sacrifice. Lysistrata. A pure white horse? Kellenite. Well, think of something better. All right, I will. Listen, this is a suggestion. Let's place a large black drinking cup down here and sacrifice a jar of Thasian wine. Then swear that we won't pour in a drop of water, just pure wine. Lampito, a magnificent oath. I'm at a loss for words. Lysistrata, someone fetch a cup and a jar of wine. The slave girl fetches a huge wine jar and a drinking cup. Murine, my dears, what specimens, what ceramic art? Kellenite, fondling the cup. Could anyone fail to handle this with pleasure? Just place it here. These people are pretty horny, huh? Place it here and help me hold the beast. She picks up the jar and speaks with solemnity of a priest. Divine persuasion, Cup of female friendship, be kind to women and receive our sacrifice. Some wine is poured from the jar. Kellyanite, the blood's a lovely color. It flows so well. Lampedo, and what a fine bouquet in Castor's name. Castor's another reference to a god, a hero. Myrrhine, allow me, ladies, to be the first to swear. Lysistrata, by Aphrodite, no. Please wait your turn. Now the cup must touch. Now we must all touch the cup. Come, Lampedo, let one of you for the group repeat my words, and then all will solemnly ratify this oath. Gravely. Here comes the oath. No male, be he adulterer or spouse, Kellyanite, no male, be he adulterer or spouse, Lysistrata, shall ever come near me with prick erect. Repeat. She says, Kellyanite hesitates. Kellyanite, shall come near me with prick erect. Oh dear, my knees are feeling weak, Lysistrata. Persisting. At home, I'll stay as chaste as any virgin. Kellyanite. At home, I'll stay as chaste as any virgin. Lysistrata. Draped in a chiffon dress, my face made up. Kellyanite. Draped in a chiffon dress, my face made up. Lysistrata. To make my husband hot with lust for me. Kellyanite. To make my husband hot with lust for me. I want you to think about, while we're reading this, what does the repetition of the oath do for the drama? Remember, you're in the audience listening to the oath, and you're hearing these lines twice. It's driving the oath home, right? To make my husband hot with lust for me. And never shall I do my husband's will. And never shall I do my husband's will. But if he uses force and tries to rape me, I'll resist, still resist, and never wither with pleasure. I'll still resist and never wither with pleasure. I'll never lift my sexy legs up high. And I'll never kneel in a lioness position. I'll keep this oath, may wine be mine to drink. If I keep this oath, may wine be mine to drink. And if I transgress, may the cup be filled with water. And if I transgress, may the cup be filled with water. Do you all others swear this oath? Everybody says, we do. Lysistrata starting to drink. Now, let me sanctify this cup. Kellyanite, fair shares, my dear, fair shares. Let's all be the best of friends. As they all drink and off stage, a cry is heard. Lampedo, I heard a shout. Lysistrata, well, didn't I tell you? It means that the Athenians' hill, the Acropolis, is in the women's hands. Come, Lampedo, you go and settle business back in Sparta and leave these girls as hostages with us. Exit Lampedo. So she leaves the Spartan girls and she goes back and gets the other women in Sparta on board. The stage building now assumes the identity of the Procula, gateway to the Acropolis. So the stage building, remember the building we saw in the background, assumes the identity, so they probably draped some things down, as the gateway to the Acropolis. The rest of us must join the women inside and help them bolt and bar the Acropolis gates. Kellyanite, you mean you think the men will send a force to deal with us? I couldn't care less, says Lysistrata. Suppose they threaten to storm the place with fire. We're never going to open the gates to them unless they come to terms with our demands. Kellyanite, well, we'll never give in. We'd lose our reputations for being nasty and fighting tooth and nail. So all the women enter the Acropolis, and soon afterwards, the old men's half chorus, struggling to carry logs, and a brazier-up hillside appears from the side. We're going to stop there right now. You've been reading with Jimmy. I know I was going to go on, but there's, let's see, you know what? Let's keep going on. We're almost done with the first part I wanted to read with you. So here comes some of the old men's half chorus. It's a half of them. You saw there were 12. Here comes 6. They're carrying logs. and a brazier up the hill. That's probably something to start the logs on fire. The parados, 254, the parados is, in fact, I think I took a note here. I didn't. That's the start of the chorus, the parados. The leader with an M. Keep up, old chap, with steady steps. Ignore your aching shoulders, your arching shoulders that carry such a heavy load of fresh-cut olive wood logs. The old men. Together, right? Long life brings many surprises. Shiver me timbers. Who would have thought, my friend, that we'd ever hear that women, whom we reared as blatant mischiefs to our homes, should seize Athena's statue and occupy our sacred hill and fasten up these massive gates with bolts and bars. The strophe is the first section of the Greek choral ode. This is a choral ode because it's done with a lot of people reciting the same words. The leader says, come on, my ancient comrade, let's push up to the summit. Now, remember, they're going up a summit. They're pretending to go up a summit. There's probably not a summit. We've got to pile these logs around the site that's occupied by these women who's carried out this bold, audacious deed. And you're going to stop there for a moment and say, this is a quick turnover. They just took over the Acropolis and already the word's out. Remember, they're condensing the play, right? Let us work to build it up and then ignite the bonfire. We're going to burn them all out in one fell swoop, not the least the wife of Lycon, a probably well-to-do Athenian. The old men, together. I swear that while I live, their plot will fail. Why, even when Clemenos seized the hill, he did not leave unscathed. For all of his Spartan puff and prowess, I made him drop his weapons. He wore a little patchy cloak. He starved, he stank. He hadn't shaved for 6 full years. So there's a note here about who this Clemenos is a king of Sparta, one of the most important Spartan kings. He was instrumental in organizing the Greek resistance against the Persian Empire of Darius. The Greeks fought the Persians. If you saw the 300 Spartans, that was one of them, and there were others. So they're talking about this Spartan guy who didn't shave for full. Remember, they're warriors, right? That's how and the leader says, that's how I showed my fierceness once in laying siege to him. We kept a vigil by the gates in rank and rank of troops. What trouble could I find it then to end the brazen scheme of women whom the gods detest, as Euripides does too? If I fail, then may my monument at Marathon collapse. Marathon was the battle against the Persian, the first one. You've heard of the Battle of Marathon, where the guy ran 26 miles to tell them that they were victorious. There's a little note here that talks about that. The guy who did that was named Prepadius, and he was a long runner, a day-long runner. They remember, no television, no internet, they exercised. So this was fought by the Athenians against the Persian at the Battle of Marathon. They won the battle, and this guy ran 26 miles back to tell them that they were victorious. So when he says, may my monument collapse. So there were monuments built at that battle site. Old men. Well, all of that's left for me to do is to climb this steep part here up the top. That's where I've got to aim. However, however will we haul this stuff without an ass? We need some mules here. My shoulders crush beneath this pair of logs, and yet we must proceed. And we must keep the fire well fanned in case we lose the flame before we're there. Remember, they didn't have matches. So when they lit a fire, they'd like to keep that flame burning. And that's what they were carrying here. When you look at that B-R-A-Z-I-E word, they were carrying the logs and the flame. Got it? If we lose the flame before we're there, oh, what a disgusting smoke. Because, it's burning something, the incense, whatever it is. How terrible, Lord Hercules, the flame leapt out at me. It's like a mad bitch biting my eyes. This fire must come from Limos way, I'm sure of it. That must be why it has teeth to bite. So the flame is licking his eyebrows. But onwards, nevertheless. Athenia needs support. Whenever we could, we help her more. Now they blow. What disgusting. They're keeping the fire going by blowing on it. Did you ever go camping and blow on a fire to keep it going? and you get smoke and it goes in your eyes, the leader says, the fire has woken up. Great, they brought it back to life. It's really come alive. Let's halt here and lay our logs down on this bit of ground. They deposit their logs. Now, dip your vinewood torches in the brazier and let until they burn. And then when they're lit, we'll make a ram to batter down the door. And if the women still refuse and won't unlock the bolts, we'll burn the doors and force them out by blinding them with smoke. Whew. I'm glad I finished. Whoa, what an introduction. You've been reading with Jimmy. That was part 1 of Lysistrata. Continue to read with this. I think now the women are barricaded. The men are going to burn them out, just like Lysistrata predicted, because they want to end the war. Thanks for reading. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. Send me your emails and look forward to part 2.